Welcome back to the BamaOnLine Podcast. Travis Reier, Senior Analyst for BOL, back with you. It is time once again for our latest installment of 3 for 3. The format here, well, three BamaOnLine staffers tackling three topics for the Alabama Crimson Tide in advance of its 2023 season opener against Middle Tennessee Saturday night at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Joining me once again this week, the exceptionally well-lit and talented Clint Lamb. Clint, I see a guitar there in the background. We talked about this a little bit before the pod, but are you karaoke, Clint? Can we throw like requests at you and you can kind of churn them out? Give us the background there with the guitar.
If you throw out one particular song, if that's the request, then I can play like three chords of that song. And so I would say that's more than most people, right? So
Oh,
we're
you
good
got
to
me
go.
whipped.
I had
That,
great intentions when I bought the guitar, Travis. I was planning on being, the next great guitar player. I tried for like maybe 2 hours and then decided, you know what, we're going to stick to football. But I did learn two or three chords of one song during that 2 hour span. And
we
so, hey, it's a start.
we have a similar background with the guitar then. The wife one year bought me a Strat just out of the blue with a amplifier. And I think I learned just a couple of chords. I got these fat fingers, that are short. That doesn't seem to translate well with picking there on the guitar. That's my excuse anyway. That's what I'm going with. A guy who doesn't need any excuses joining us as well. That's Jimmy Stein. Now, Jimmy, I see with you, you've got that number 2 miniature helmet on the shelf there.
I,
Is that signed by David Palmer, or what are we talking about
it
with the
it
helmet?
actually is signed by David Palmer. I'm not really a huge autograph guy. I am a little bit just like anyone, but I think that is the only autograph thing I have ever purchased where the guy wasn't in front of me signing. You know what I mean?
Okay.
That's because I'm a huge David Palmer guy. He's always been my Alabama guy, always will be, and even none of these Heisman winners could knock Palmer off that perch for me. So yeah, that's the Stein Palmer helmet.
Yeah, I
No
think for
one's going to
guy,
question. No one's going to question Jimmy's, bandwagon fandom because 90% of the Bama fans nowadays, I feel like, would assume that that's like a Patrick Surtain or somebody similar, but not Jimmy. Jimmy's going with the old school.
yeah, old heads like Jimmy and I, that the deuce resonates still all these years later, no doubt about it. One of the greatest to ever do it for the Crimson Tide. I'm not an autograph guy either. I know people see the jerseys in the background here. Chipper Jones, Jerome Bettis. To be totally honest, a friend of mine years and years ago had a sports bar in Northeast Florida that unfortunately didn't quite make it. I got great deals on both those jerseys. They were boxed, framed, signed. That's why I got them. I like them. I like both those guys, but I kind of like Jimmy when it comes to the sports memorabilia and the autographs as well. All right, fellas, let's get into it. From 3-1, three questions for the Crimson Tide prior to the 2023 lid lifter. Let's start with this one. And Clint, you get the first swipe at it. Most approve on Saturday night, Alabama's offensive line or its defensive front seven, Clint?
Man, that's such a great question because I feel like a lot of people there's high expectations for the defense, right? And I think that everybody understands the defense is going to play a huge role in whatever level of success that Alabama has this season. But the hype, especially recently, and it's been this way from some people all throughout the offseason, but recently it feels like the offensive line has started to generate a lot of buzz. Now, I've said since the spring when we heard great things about the offensive line, and then you got to A-Day and what we saw as far as being able to consistently move people in the run game and stuff, you really didn't see it. I've said the time to roll out that you're back to being the old dominant physical up front Alabama is not in an A-Day performance. It's not against MTSU either. It's more so Texas week 2 where you really say this is, we're back to playing that bully ball. I think people will be concerned if they don't see Alabama pushing around that Middle Tennessee defensive front. But I think for this particular game, next week will be a completely different answer for me. But for this week, I'm going to go with the defensive front. And because there's been concerns about that, I think people are excited about the offensive line and where it's heading. They're excited about the defense as a whole. But if there's one question mark, it is the defensive front. And, I think that if you can see them dominate up front in this type of setting, then that, I don't think you can take away a ton from it. But at the same time, I do think it would bode well if they get pushed around, allow some success, to Middle Tennessee's rushing offense. You might have some Alabama fans concerned heading into that week 2 performance against Texas.
Yeah, and Jimmy, when you look at this Alabama defensive front seven, the combinations both up front and at the linebacker levels are intriguing to consider, especially when you think about the practice footage that Alabama released yesterday that showed what appeared to be Jahad Campbell in a black non-contact jersey. So when you start thinking about inside linebackers with Deontay Lawson and Tresman Marshall and the availability of Campbell and then the depth that they have, talented guys, unproven for the most part. But up front, a lot of productivity that needs to be replaced with Byron Young moving on to the next level. That being said, is it maybe still the offensive line for you? Which way do you go in this pick of fronts here on the offensive and defensive sides of the ball?
I could have easily gone with either one. It's such a good question. I think both have a lot to prove. There's ample question marks, I think, on both sides. I'm going to go with the offensive line for this reason, though it's close, and Clint had a great answer. I think 2 seasons ago, Bryce Young won the Heisman Trophy, but he did it behind an offensive line that, per Alabama standards, was pretty bad. For college football, it was average, but for Alabama, that wasn't a good offensive line. Bryce was sacked something like 40 times, which is absurd considering how athletic the kid is and what a good decision maker he is. But it wasn't a good offensive line. The quarterback was just spectacular. Last year, the offensive line I thought was improved, and Bryce was hurt for a good chunk of the season, but the offensive line was improved. Now you have a completely different quarterback situation. The quarterback is not the first pick in the draft. He's not very likely going to win a Heisman Trophy. I think the offensive line has to be radically improved to give the new quarterback a chance. It's not Bryce Young. It's not a guy that's able to do it on his own. Whenever you have a new quarterback, a young quarterback, a quarterback that's maybe a step back or two from what you just put on the field, everyone around him has to be better. The receivers have to be better. The backs have to be better. The tight ends have to be better. But certainly the offensive line has to give the guy as much of a chance as possible. That means being dominant in the run game to take a lot of pressure off of him. That means providing pristine protection to give him enough time to go through reads, to get comfortable in the pocket, to not have him take the snap and just have to bail like would have been the case in 2021. So I'm going to go with the offensive line because they not only have to be improved, they need to be really good to give this young quarterback a chance.
Yeah, I think when you look at this question and you think about it in terms of both aspects, I think Clint hit on this too. Texas is going to be the prove it game, really, for this team in general in week 2. I think Alabama could run for 250 plus yards Saturday night against Middle Tennessee. And a lot of people will just look at it like, well, it's Middle Tennessee, even though the Blue Raiders did rank top 30 among FBS defenses and rush defense a year ago, and say, well, that's what Alabama's supposed to do. Defensively, Middle Tennessee on the offensive side isn't going to really challenge Alabama with the run game like Texas might be able to do with some balance a week from Saturday in Tuscaloosa. So I'm going to go, though, with the offensive line for the simple fact that what have we heard this entire offseason and through the preseason? The identity of this football team starts with physicality, and understand the defensive front has a big role in that as well. But we've heard so much about this offense and this style of play that we're going to anticipate seeing under Tommy Rees in year 1. You're talking about a unit that's really carrying the torch for this entire team, at least going into the season, and how you expect Alabama to get back to physically imposing its will on opposing defenses and teams in general. So with that, let's get to topic number 2. Guys, defender most likely for Alabama to produce the first takeaway of the 2023 season. Jimmy, you get the first crack at this one.
Yeah, this was fun. Obviously, it's a stab in the dark. No one knows what will happen. It could just be as simple as a defensive lineman pawing at the ball at the line of scrimmage, or a tip ball that's caught by one of the big guys or a front seven guy or a deep ball that's picked off by safety. But I try to put some real thought into, okay, who is Alabama playing? What are they likely to do? And I foresee Middle Tennessee using a lot of quick throws in this game. I don't think they're going to try to establish the run. I think they're going to try to make a lot of quick throws to the outside to accomplish a couple things. Let's keep the clock running. Let's make this a short game, and let's get the heck out of here with our check. Or number two, let's not get our quarterback hurt. Let's not lose to Alabama and then lose the season in the same game because we got too many kids hurt. I think they're going to just do a quick pass game in order, like I said, keep the clock moving, keep the ball out of the trenches where guys could get beat up and worn out. So I'm picturing for the first turnover of the year, guys, a quick throw to a slot receiver, and Alabama's nickel corner, Malachi Moore, strips the ball out, causes a fumble, which is recovered by the Alabama defense. But I got Malachi Moore stripping a Middle Tennessee receiver near the line of scrimmage, and then let's just say Deontay Lawson comes up with the ball in the pile.
How about it, Clint? Which way you going with this one?
If it was a bigger game out the gate, I think Terrion Arnold would have been the safest choice, just because I feel like, like Quinn Ewers, if you're going to test those Alabama corners, you're probably going to look more towards Terrion Arnold than you are Kool-Aid McKinstry. So that would have been the safe answer. But I agree with Jimmy that I think it's quick, safe passes. Now, granted, MTSU's offense really has been built on a lot of explosive plays. Like, I don't think from a consistency standpoint, they're always there as far as being able to move the football consistently. But as far as, creating some big pop moments, I could see them trying something like that. But at the same time, look at Utah State last year. And I felt like they were a much better, more established offense than MTSU is going to be. But they were very safe and wanted to kind of do what Jimmy said, just, quick, efficient passing, run the clock, get out of the game as quickly as possible. I'm going to say that Alabama, dials up some pressure, tries to create some difficult moments for their quarterback. Everybody talks about how Alabama's breaking in a new quarterback. The Blue Raiders are too. And so I think they're going to try to force some pressure onto him. And it's a matter of, is it a Dallas Turner script that maybe like a Justin Aboybe is able to, jump on a fumble, something like that? Or does the pressure force the quarterback, the new quarterback to throw an interception or something? That I can't really answer. I'm going to go with the Aboybe fumble recovery based off of either a Dallas Turner or Chris Braswell sack.
I'm going to jump on that Caleb Downs train like everybody else at this point, guys. This guy seems to have a knack for being around the football. Even as a senior last year on the prep level, I believe he had 5 interceptions. We saw him pick off a pass in the 8A scrimmage. Now, it was an end of half situation where Jalen Milroe had to get the ball into the end zone, and Downs was able to take advantage of that. But hey, at this point, why not Caleb Downs, right? And by the way, great feature by our Charlie Potter there at BamaOnline.com with Caleb Downs. If you haven't seen that, be sure to check out Charlie's great work. But that's where I'm going to go. I'll tell you this too. Kevin Steele should know this Middle Tennessee offense better than anybody. At Miami last season, he was on the receiving end, unfortunately, of that blitzkrieg where MTSU threw for over 400 yards in that upset of the Hurricanes. MTSU scored 45 points. Now, 10 of those were kind of on the offensive side of things for Miami. A couple interceptions by Tyler Van Dyke really set the tone in that game, unfortunately, for But I think we even heard Rick Stockstill, the MTSU head coach, talk about it in recent days. We watched some of Notre Dame in terms of Tommy Rees. We watched some of Miami. Well, yeah, I'm sure MTSU did watch some of Miami from last year. And, for Kevin, what has this week been like from a prep standpoint? Because that MTSU film has been part of what Alabama's watched in advance of this MTSU offense.
That's a great point about Kevin Steele. I think the answer you would get from Kevin Steele, and I'm not talking about the answer to the media, but I think if you went to Kevin Steele and said, okay, what's going to be different this year? Culture. I mean, Alabama hasn't lost one of these games since 2007. Miami, in the Mario Cristobal infancy of his program at Miami, the first thing he had to do was change the culture. That is not something that happens overnight. So I'm sure Kevin Steele feels a lot more comfortable with what he inherited at Alabama and defending Middle Tennessee than what he was trying to build at Miami. Hey, Kevin, it's sort of already built here. We could use some help, could use some wrinkles, could use some renewed emphasis on things, but it's already built here.
Yeah, MTSU had 6 pass plays of 40 yards or more last season, the entire season. 4 of them came in that win over Miami, down there in the Miami area. So plenty to consider there with this MTSU offense. I think Clint also hit on it. It is an MTSU offense breaking in a new quarterback. A couple of 3 receivers have moved on, but you got a couple of guys that were very prominent in that offense a year ago that will be on the field and will challenge an Alabama secondary, as we know, breaking in several new faces across the board. So as we wrap things up with our topic du jour, number 1 on the list this week, guys, without a shadow of a doubt, Jalen Milroe will take the first snap at quarterback for Alabama on Saturday night. What's your confidence level in that particular statement? And Clint, we'll start with you.
What's the scale? Is it 10 out of 10, 100 out of 100, 1,000 out of 1,000? Either way, I'm going over that. I feel pretty confident that it's going to be Jalen Milroe at this point. And I mean, the fact that nobody else stepped up, and Nick Saban talked about it in fall camp, force us to play you. And I think that, all of these quarterbacks are doing some good things. They're all still struggling a little bit. I think that the best remedy for that is to just get them out there, let them, trial by fire, and just see how they grow and develop. And I think all these quarterbacks, I say all, I think at least 2 of them are going to get an opportunity with the game, quote unquote, still in doubt on Saturday. And it could even be 3. I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily go that far, but we'll see how it plays out. But at the same time, no one has taken the job from Jalen Milroe, who was the backup last year. He's got the experience. He got the start. He's been in the system. And so until one of these other guys steps up and takes it from him, which even if that happens on Saturday and Milroe is the first guy to take the first snap, that doesn't mean that he's going to take the first snap of every game moving forward. And Nick Saban has said that multiple times. So it's all about development. It's all about continued competition. But I would be shocked if Jalen Milroe was not the one taking the first snap on Saturday.
What about you, Jimmy? What's the confidence level in Jalen Milroe taking that first snap against MTSU?
Yeah, it's a high confidence level, like Clint, very, very high. I will say I will back off slightly from where Clint is with that, but I'm very confident it will be Jalen Milroe. The reason I would say back off slightly is I think there's room here, even though Milroe's kind of been the first quarterback with the first team since the first practice of the spring, much less the fall camp. But, maybe there's room here for Nick Saban to be telling Jalen Milroe late, hey, I gave you every opportunity. You can't say you didn't get opportunity and you never took off with this and never separated yourself from the others. So I'm going to give, Buckner, who's got the most experience, the start against Middle Tennessee. I think there's a very small possibility that could be the case. But I tend to look at things for what they are. And Jalen Milroe has been the first quarterback with the first team, like I said, going all the way back to spring practices. Now, if you count all practices and spring practices, now we're up to high 30s, 36 practices, 38 practices. We have no evidence whatsoever that Milroe hasn't been the first team quarterback with the first team offense in all 37 practices. So I'm very confident it's Milroe. Otherwise, we would have wasted, frankly, a lot of valuable reps there. So I think it's Jalen. I think it's always been Jalen. And I also will throw in, guys, I think there's this idea that you go and get Buckner or there's this open competition just simply because Nick Saban doesn't talk about it. That doesn't mean that Jalen Milroe hasn't clearly been the best quarterback of the 5 since the spring. And I think personally we shouldn't be surprised at all if Jalen Milroe plays really well Saturday night.
Yeah, hey, Travis, can I change my answer?
Okay, go ahead.
I want to leave a slight opening for the possibility of bringing back the Wildcat. I'm going to go 0.01% chance that they go 2 running back and get crazy with this. You want to slam the football. Now, I mean, at that point, you might as well start Jalen Milroe because he'd probably be your best option in that package too. But yeah, I agree with Jimmy. Maybe I'm getting a little too overconfident here, but it would be a lot of wasted reps that you've spent on Jalen Milroe if you plan on heading in a different direction.
Yeah, wasn't it Mark Ingram in the 2009 opener against Virginia Tech? McElroy was in the game. He just wasn't lined up at quarterback, technically, I think, in that opener in Atlanta all those years ago. So I'm with you guys. And I think the second scrimmage, what we were able to gather from that, sounds like Jalen was in a good spot to at least start the season as the number one guy coming out of that scrimmage because of what we heard about reps and his presence with the first team offense and the fact that it was kind of a limited performance for Jalen Milroe, as if we understand what we've got with you. This is the situation for now. Now, what we talk about a week from now, perhaps in relation to the quarterback situation, could be a good bit different. I'll say this. MTSU, I think we all expect to put a lot of guys up there and say, we know you've talked about physicality. We know you've talked about your offensive line. We know about your running backs, but you're not just going to line up and pound the rock against us. And with that, I think there's going to be some one-on-one opportunities across the field. And Nick Saban's not going to look at Tommy Rees and say, don't take shots if those are the opportunities, because you have to be able to hit on those. It goes back to what we talked about throughout this offseason. It's convenient and it's comforting to think, you know what, we can just pound the rock and that's it. That's not realistic. You're going to have to hit some plays. And it's not just on Jalen and the quarterbacks. It's on these receivers too. You know, there needs to be, as we've heard and talked about, Clint, a lot more consistency from these receivers. And I think the potential is there for Alabama to hit on 4, 5, 6 explosive plays on Saturday night. Question is, quarterback wide receiver combination, can they do it?
I mean, you've had a lot of different quarterbacks taking reps. You've had a lot of different running backs back there, you know, pass protection, contributing in that way, being receivers out of the backfield. You got 6, 7, 8 receivers. You got 4 different tight ends. There's been so much competition and rotation. I think that as you start to condense this a little bit, I don't know how much they'll condense it. They might use 4 running backs and 4 tight ends and, you know, at least 6 receivers or maybe 7 receivers. I highly doubt it'll be 8, you know, outside of just mop-up duty. But as you condense this a little bit, I think the efficiency and the timing and the chemistry really will start to grow. But you're right. It falls on more than just the quarterbacks as far as being able to get the job done. There's been throws in practice from what we've seen and heard that were great throws. And quarterbacks that are trying to build their confidence, you've got to be able to help them out and make those catches when they are on the money to try to do that. And so I'm not as concerned about the drops as maybe the numbers would indicate based off of coming out of scrimmages and the open practice and A-Day and all that. But it is something that needs to get cleaned up. And I think that when you look at this group as a whole, explosive plays, they're going to want to run the football effectively and consistently. They want to be able to, it's very difficult to create a physical, you know, tone setting offense when you're just dropping back and throwing the football 50 times a game. When you're slamming it into the opposing defense, 50 plays out of the 75 that you're running, which I don't think it's going to be that kind of percentage, but a high percentage, that's where you take, impose your will, take the will away of the defense. And I think Alabama is going to want to do that. But what will set that up for consistent success, it's not just constantly slamming it up against the wall. It's creating opportunities where the defense has to respect certain aspects of your passing game. And I think that, you're going to see some shot plays and trying to play some complementary football on offense that really helps and alleviates some of the concerns as far as teams stacking the box and things like that. And if teams are stacking the box and they're doing a lot of those different things, you're now setting your passing attack or your quarterback up with ideal conditions. And so if you can just simply have a quarterback that can take advantage in those situations, I think Alabama, could end up having a very good passing game, but not necessarily because I think they're going to get elite quarterback play, but because the conditions and the way that they set up the offense as far as being able to run the football will set up those ideal conditions.
Yeah, to Clint's point, Jimmy, how many of these running backs are you expecting to see in the first half alone? I think 4. I think we're going to see all 4 of these backs, the top 4 of the 5 anyway. I think we're going to see Jace McClellan. We're going to see Roydell Williams. We're going to see Jam Miller, and we're going to see Justice Haynes, assuming Justice is in a good place from a health perspective. We know he's been dealing with an issue here of late. If all of that is all those things are equal, Jimmy, is that what you're kind of anticipating? Not only for the running backs, but hell, we might see 4 or 5 tight ends in the first half too.
It is tremendous depth. To me, it's what defines this team. And at running back, at tight end, even at wide receiver, there's just a number of quality bodies at all of these spots. And yeah, I can. My answer would be 4 running backs in the first half, and you went over them: Jace, Roydell, Jam, and Justice. Certain of 3. Certain that we'll see Roydell Williams, Jace McClellan, and Jam Miller in that first half. I believe we will see Justice Haynes in the first half. If not, Justice Haynes could get a large number of reps in the second half. But all 4 will be in the plan. All 4 will play 4 tight ends at least in Amari Knobloch, C.J. Dupree, Danny Lewis, and Robbie Ouse. And I think as many as 6 receivers for sure will all play in the first half. Burton, Brooks, Benson, Bond, Prentice, and Law. I see them all playing in the first half. That's a lot of skill position players, but it's what Alabama, I think, brings to the table the most in 2023 is a depth of talent at all the skill position spots.
And the continued evaluation of these guys. You know, at wide receiver, you're still searching a little bit. You have guys that by committee are capable of producing and complementing one another. Same thing at the tight end position as well. But boy, so much to figure out in this upcoming matchup with Middle Tennessee. And guys, as always, appreciate you taking time here on 3 for 3. Clint, look forward to your continued work on the website, BamaOnLine.com. Same with Jimmy. Guys, be safe in the upcoming days. And boy, we've got SEC football Thursday night with Florida, Utah, and then we're going to go right through the weekend, including LSU, Florida State to wrap up the weekend. I guess you guys, Clint, pretty well set, pretty well ready to go.
Utah, Florida, in just over 24 hours. It's been a long off season, but we're here. We're finally here.
What about it, Jimmy? I mean, how many televisions you got set up in Casa de Stein? I mean, you got
there's 3 that get a lot of. I don't do the hey, they're all stacked together. I keep them in separate rooms, but I pace. I'm a pacer when it comes to football. I like pacing between rooms and seeing what's going on. But I'm going to watch a ton of football, including even Monday night, Clemson at Duke.
Wow.
Sidebar. Just one of my best friends in the world. His daughter is Riley Leonard's girlfriend. So I've been a Riley Leonard fan for a long time. He's from my hometown, and we trained him at QB country. So I'm a big Riley Leonard fan, and he gets his shot at home to knock off Clemson and Dabo Monday night. So I'm really excited about that one too.
Yeah, those Mobile area quarterbacks, they seem to work out pretty good. Seems like, not bad. Not bad.
There's been a few that have worked out, even at Alabama.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Absolutely. You've had a handful going back a ways at the quarterback position for Alabama from that Mobile area. Hey, we're going to be talking plenty about quarterbacks, as you might expect, at BamaOnline.com coming up in the coming days. We'll be continuing our preview of the 2023 season opener, courtesy of Charlie Potter, Clint, Jimmy, and myself. And also, don't forget, from a recruiting standpoint, big list of visitors expected in Tuscaloosa this weekend. We'll have a running list of those prospects and analysis. You're going to be able to find that on our premium message board, the Roundtable. A lot of that information going to be provided to you by Joseph Hastings, Andrew Bone, Tim Watts. So you don't want to miss out on the recruiting coverage as well. Thanks again to Clint and Jimmy for being a part of 3 for 3. And from the 3 of us, thanks for watching. And until next time, so long, everybody.